I don't remember what the weather was like that day. It's strange, isn't it? We remember the scent of a sweater, the sound of someone's voice calling us in for dinner, but not always the sky overhead when we made the worst mistake of our life. I've replayed that day in my mind for over 30 years now, and I still can't tell you if it was cloudy or clear. All I remember is the blinking cursor on my computer screen, and a flight reservation I never used. My name is Margaret Walker. I'm 60 now. I live alone in a small house just outside Denver. The paint peels in the back porch. There's an old maple tree that groans when the wind hits just right. Some people call this part of your life the quiet years. I think they mean well when they say that, but for me, it's just the echo. You see, I had a ticket. A plane ticket that should have taken me back home, back to two people who loved me more than anything in this world. I didn't take the flight. And the next day, the plane fell from the sky. I had booked it weeks in advance. It was supposed to be a surprise. I'd been living in Los Angeles at the time, working 80-hour weeks as a project lead at a tech firm. We were scaling. Everyone said we were on the edge of something big. I was too. I just didn't know it was the edge of a cliff. That Tuesday night, my mother called. "Your father's making that chili you love," she said, her voice warm and lilting. "You know, the one with the black beans and way too much garlic." I laughed. "Is he still pretending it's healthy just because it has vegetables in it?" "He's adding kale this year," she replied, mock serious. "He thinks that'll win you over." They didn't know I was already coming. I had planned it for weeks. Booked the flight, packed the coat they gave me for Christmas. I even wrapped a bottle of wine in 3 layers of bubble wrap. Dad always acted like Cabernet was too fancy for chili, but he still finished the bottle every time. And then came Thursday. It started like any other day: emails, back-to-back meetings, rushed coffee. Until around noon, when the CEO himself walked in and pulled me aside. "We need you on this one," he said, eyes sparkling with that desperate ambition we all fed off of back then. "You close this deal, your partner. Full equity." I didn't think. I didn't breathe. I just nodded. I canceled the flight. I texted my parents a vague excuse: "Something came up, can't make it, love you." Mom responded with a heart. Dad didn't text back. He never liked the phone much anyway. That night, as I stayed late at the office drafting proposals, the news alert popped up on my screen. "Breaking, Flight 237 from LAX to Des Moines lost contact 47 minutes after takeoff." I froze. I clicked the link. The page wouldn't load. My hands shook as I opened my email, scrolling for the reservation confirmation, praying that I hadn't bought a seat on that plane. And when I finally found it, my chest collapsed in on itself. It was the same flight. I was supposed to be on it. But I wasn't. Because I said yes to a meeting. Because I believed I had time. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the floor of my apartment with the lights off, surrounded by untouched files and blueprints and business cards. My phone buzzed once. A voicemail from my mom, time-stamped an hour before the flight. "Sweetheart, I know you said you can't come. But your dad and we're still heading to the airport. Just in case. Maybe you'll change your mind." She laughed a little, like it was a joke. I listened to that laugh over and over. It was the last one I ever heard. They waited for me. They waited for a flight that would never land. And it never came.
They waited anyway. Even after I texted that I couldn't come. Even after I broke the promise I never had the courage to say out loud. They still got in their car, drove an hour to the airport, and sat on those hard plastic chairs near Gate B6. The same chairs I used to nap on as a kid after long flights home from college. Mom always brought a book. Dad never did. He preferred to sit, arms folded, watching the arrivals board flicker. I imagine that's what they were doing that night. Her with her mystery novel. Him with his silence. Both of them hoping that somehow I'd appear. That maybe I'd changed my mind. That maybe their daughter still knew how to come home. I found out later from the airport staff, they waited for 4 hours. 4. Even after the crash was on the news. Even after it became clear the flight wasn't late, it was gone. I don't know what broke me more, the crash itself or the fact that they stayed. That they didn't give up on me, even when the world already had. I flew home the next morning. Red-eye. It was a strange sensation, boarding a plane right after such a tragedy. Every engine noise, every bit of turbulence felt like a taunt from God. But I had to go. I needed to see them. To tell them I was okay. To hold them. When I landed, the airport looked the same. Isn't that cruel? The world keeps spinning even after your axis snaps. They were there, waiting again, this time in the quiet corner of the hospital waiting room. Dad looked older. Smaller. Mom had her cardigan draped over her knees, though it was spring. Her eyes lit up when she saw me, but not with joy, with relief. Like she'd been holding her breath for hours and could finally exhale. "I told him you'd come," she whispered, squeezing my hand. "Eventually." We didn't talk about the crash. Not directly. They knew. I knew. That was enough. Instead, we talked about my work. My apartment. The ridiculous dog my neighbor just adopted who howled at jazz music. We laughed. We cried a little. And then I left again. I told them I'd be back soon. I meant it. I always meant it. But somehow time slips. It melts through the cracks of our calendars, buried under deadlines and meetings and good intentions. The next time I saw them, it was Christmas. Mom had lost weight. Her hugs were lighter. Dad moved slower. There were oxygen tanks in the living room, tucked behind the couch like secrets. They still smiled when they saw me. Still asked if I wanted chili. Still called me their girl. You'd never guess, looking at them, that just 10 months earlier, they'd watched the sky swallow a plane I was supposed to be on. That they'd stood on the edge of a horror most people only see in movies. And that after all that, they still chose to wait for me. Not just at the airport that night, but every day after. Every missed call. Every postponed visit. Every voicemail I didn't return. They waited. Because that's what love does. It waits. Even when it shouldn't have to. Even when it hurts. Grief doesn't always come screaming through the door. Sometimes it tiptoes in with the mail, quiet and polite, wearing the face of routine. That's how it came for me. Through little changes I chose not to see or couldn't bear to. A shaky voice on the phone. A longer pause between hello and how are you? Cough that didn't go away. Mom was first. Started with fatigue. Just a little tired, she said. You know your dad and his late-night crossword puzzles. He never lets me sleep. She laughed, but the laugh sounded thinner than it used to. Then she stopped walking to the mailbox. Then she stopped going to church. By summer, she was using a cane. I didn't ask questions. Maybe because I didn't want the answers. Or maybe because I'd gotten so good at making excuses for my distance, it became second nature. I flew back in July. She hugged me with one arm. The other held tightly to the doorframe. You're working too hard, she said, smiling as always. You've got that look again. The same one you had before prom. When you were afraid your shoes didn't match. Dad chuckled, but he didn't meet my eyes. Later, I found out they'd both been to the doctor that week. He had high blood pressure. She had early-stage cancer. Neither of them told me. They didn't want to worry me. Isn't that wild? They didn't want to worry me. As if I were the one who needed protecting. As if I hadn't already lost enough of them. In the fall, I called one night after a long meeting. Mom didn't answer. Dad did. His voice was soft. Slower than usual. She's resting, he said. Had a tough day. But she'll call you tomorrow, okay? She didn't. The next few months felt like holding my breath underwater. I could feel something heavy pressing down, but I kept swimming through it. Through meetings and deadlines and speeches and cocktail hours with clients I didn't even like. I told myself I was building a future. I told myself they were stable. I told myself a lot of things. By November, Mom was in a hospital bed in their living room. Dad had moved her sewing machine to the garage to make space. The thread still hung on the last spool she touched, a soft gray. She smiled when I walked in. "See," she whispered. "You came home again." I stayed for 4 days. Not long enough. Never long enough. Christmas came. She didn't get out of bed. Dad cooked everything. His famous chili, oversalted cornbread, and store-bought cookies he tried to pass off as his own. We ate together at the table, her chair empty. He put her wedding ring in my hand that night. "Just in case," he said. I wanted to scream. I wanted to beg him not to talk like that. But I didn't. Instead I nodded. Like it was normal. Like death didn't live in the next room. And then I flew back to LA. I had a pitch to make. Investors waiting. I told myself I'd return in 2 weeks. She died 4 days later. The morning after she died, the sun came up like nothing happened. That was the first betrayal. I stood in the kitchen, staring at the toast that had popped up minutes ago, untouched. The scent of burned bread filled the room, but I couldn't move. Couldn't cry. Couldn't scream. I just stood there, still silent, like a ghost watching someone else's life from a distance. Dad was already dressed. He wore a tie. For no reason at all, just the tie. That was his way of holding dignity like a shield. Even while the world collapsed around him. "We'll keep it simple," he said, eyes on the window. "Just close family." She wouldn't want anything big. I nodded, though my chest ached with things I hadn't said. I thought the funeral would break me. But it didn't. You know what did? Coming back to Los Angeles. The first morning back, I walked into my office and saw the congratulations banner still taped above my desk. A coworker had hung it weeks earlier, just before I left to be with Mom. It was meant to celebrate the company's expansion. We had just closed a 7-figure deal. I stared at it like it was a cruel joke. Success. That word again. Shiny and hollow and so far removed from what I needed. That night I went home, opened a bottle of wine, and stared at the blinking voicemail light. My father had called. "It's quiet here," he said. "Too quiet." He didn't ask me to come back. He never did. But I heard the plea anyway. I flew back the next weekend. Everything in the house smelled like her. Lavender lotion. Vanilla candles. Chicken soup in the freezer with a label that read, "For Margaret. If she ever comes home." I stayed a week. Then 2. I started helping Dad pay bills, drive to appointments, cook dinner. We barely talked at first. Just passed each other like 2 people haunted by the same ghost. Then one night, he opened a box from the attic. Inside, old photos, letters, cards I'd made as a child. He pulled out one. Construction paper folded in half, covered in glitter and crooked hearts. "To Daddy and Mommy. I love you more than meetings." We laughed. Then we cried. It was the first time he let himself break. "She waited for you, you know," he said. "That whole year. Even when her body gave up, her hope didn't." I wanted to tell him I was sorry. That I wished I could go back. That I'd trade every trophy, every bonus, every late night at the office for just one more evening at that old dinner table with both of them there. But he already knew. Fathers always do. He passed away 3 months later. Collapsed in the backyard while watering the rose bush she planted the spring before she got sick. They said it was his heart. I think it was something else. I buried them side by side. Same plot. Same headstone. Her name etched above his like always, just a little ahead, still leading the way. When I came back to Los Angeles for good, my apartment felt like a stranger's place. Nothing fit anymore. Not the city, not the job, not even my name on the office door. I stood in the middle of the living room one night, suitcase still unopened, and whispered into the quiet. I did everything right. And still lost everything that mattered. After I buried them, I stopped rushing. Not all at once. But slowly, like a machine losing power. The kind of slow that's almost invisible until one day it just doesn't start. I stepped back from the company. First as a sabbatical. Then a resignation. They were kind. Confused but kind. "You're still young," they said. "You could build something else." But I didn't want to build anything anymore. I wanted to feel something I hadn't in years, stillness. So I moved. Packed what little still mattered into my father's old pickup and drove east. I ended up in a quiet town in Colorado just outside Denver, where the wind smells like pine and time moves like it has nowhere else to be. I bought a small white house with chipped paint and a porch swing that creaks when you sit on it. My neighbors are polite. They wave but don't ask questions. It's perfect. I started spending weekends at the airport. Strange, I know. Most people avoid them unless they're traveling. But for me, they became a kind of chapel, sacred and aching. I'd sit near the arrival gates, watch people reunite. A young man running into his grandmother's arms, sobbing into her sweater. A soldier surprising his daughter, who dropped her stuffed bunny and just stared at him like a miracle. A woman holding a welcome home, idiot sign, laughing before she even saw who she was waiting for. I watched them all, each moment like a thread stitching up something inside me I thought was beyond repair. Sometimes I wrote down what I saw. Other times I just sat there, hands folded, remembering. No one noticed me. Except once. A little boy, no older than 6, wandered away from his mother and plopped down next to me. "Are you somebody's grandma?" he asked, squinting at me like I held a secret. I smiled. "Not today." He looked serious, thinking that over. "You look like you're waiting for someone." I paused, surprised by how true that felt. "I think I always am," I said. His mother came rushing over then, apologizing, pulling him away. He waved as he left. "You should tell them you're waiting," he called out, "so they can find you." I don't know what he meant. Maybe he didn't either. But the words stayed with me. I started writing letters. Not to anyone living. Just to them. My parents. I'd sit in the terminal and write as if they were still out there somewhere, still waiting for me to come home. "Dear Mom, the chili recipe you left didn't include measurements. Did you do that on purpose? Dear Dad, I saw a man today who looked like you, arguing with a vending machine." I cried and laughed at the same time. I never mailed them. Just folded each one carefully and kept them in a shoebox beneath my bed. Sometimes I think grief isn't about moving on. Sometimes it's about finding new places for love to live. For me, it lives in airports. In handwritten letters. In the silence between departures and arrivals. Time has a way of folding in on itself. Some days I wake up and feel the weight of all the years pressed against my skin. Other days I swear I can still smell my mother's lavender soap, or hear my father muttering about crossword clues he already solved. And sometimes I still imagine the version of me who got on that plane, who hugged her parents at the arrival's gate, who sat at that kitchen table, ate too much chili, and told her mother the wine didn't pair but tasted just fine. But I wasn't that version. I am who I became. And maybe that's the hardest part, to love someone, to lose them, and to keep living inside the version of yourself that didn't get it right. But we go on. A few months ago I saw her, one of the girls who used to wait near me at the airport. She always had earbuds in, tapping at her phone with a kind of nervous hope. One day she told me she hadn't spoken to her mother in 5 years. Said their last conversation ended in yelling. And since then, silence had become the safest place. I never gave advice. Just listened. Sometimes that's enough. But that day, I told her something I hadn't said aloud before. "Regret," I said, "is a very quiet death. Louder than grief. Heavier than anger. You can live with it, but it'll live louder than you if you let it." She looked at me like she understood. "Last week I got a letter. From her." She wrote. I flew home. I knocked on her door. She cried before I could say a word. "Thank you for being the reason I turned around." I sat with that letter for a long time. Not crying. Just holding it. Like it was the permission I never gave myself. Maybe I wasn't meant to rewrite my ending. But maybe, just maybe, I could help someone else change theirs. And that mattered. I've started writing more stories mostly. Pieces of lives I've never lived but somehow know by heart. I read them aloud to myself at night, like bedtime prayers I never learned to say when I was younger. Yesterday I took a flight. The first in years. Not to anywhere big. Just a quiet coastal town with a bookstore, a bakery and ocean air that smells like salt and forgetting. I didn't bring much. Just the shoebox of letters. And the photo of my parents at the airport the day they first came to visit me in college. They're holding a "Welcome Home, Sweetheart" sign my mother clearly painted in the car. It's crooked. Beautifully so. I left that photo on the seat next to me. Let it ride along. Let it see the sky. As we took off I didn't cry. I didn't clutch the armrest or pray for forgiveness. I just closed my eyes and whispered. Sometimes the most important things in life only need one flight. I didn't take mine. But if someone else does, Maybe that's enough. And for the first time in decades, I felt like I had finally landed.